The Democratic Alliance in the eThekwini municipality has failed in its bid to dissolve the city council. The motion was tabled by the party in an attempt to deal with service delivery problems in the metro. DA leader in KwaZulu-Natal, Francois Rodgers, joins me to tell us a bit more about the party's next move. Mr. Rodgers, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Firstly, tell us, how does the recent defeat of the motion to dissolve the eThekwini municipality impact your future strategy here?
Good afternoon, Nhlanhla, and to your viewers. Look, it's a process that we're following. As you know, just previously, the IFP had put in a motion of no confidence against the Mayor, Kaunda, which was a very close contest. We then looked at the disillusionment, and we were hoping that more parties, more of the smaller parties, would realize that the situation in eThekwini is beyond critical and is really of grave concern. That having failed, we're now exploring through the courts the possibility of getting the water license to the city revoked and putting in a service provider that can actually get the job done.
You describe the situation as being beyond critical. Maybe for the benefit of our viewers, just remind us of the service-related issues that are impacting this region.
Well, water is the big problem, and water has been the problem for the last 2 years. And the situation doesn't improve, it just gets worse. So on any given day, you have more than 1 million people in that city that don't have water. And it particularly affects the northern parts of the city. That's Phoenix, Tongaat, Verulam, and Durban North. And the situation, we've been promised solutions. The Minister of Water Affairs, Senzam Tukuna, has been on the ground, made promises, and Kaunda has made promises. We were told by the 15th of this month the situation would have improved. They've now admitted they're not going to meet that deadline and that there are further challenges that they never foresaw. The reality is the situation has allowed to unfold. There's been no proactive intervention, maintenance, and forward planning.
So the frustration is quite palpable, as what we've seen in the recent protests involving residents of Phoenix specifically. But as the DA, speak to us about some of the solutions or ways that you wish to address some of these service-related issues, or even the issue of governance in the province.
Well, Nhlanhla, one of the things I undertook, because of the crisis, I went and met with the Umgeni Water Board. It's now called Umgeni Utukela Water Board, because the city was blaming the water board for not supplying the amount of water that they need. On 2 occasions, having engaged with the board and officials, clearly there's no problem with water supply. The problem comes about in reticulation. So when there are bursts, they're not being repaired, they're not being detected, the valves aren't being cleaned, they're not being replaced. So it's a failure of the infrastructure. And the city clearly cannot do what it's supposed to do.
So it does sound to me like this, or the response requires also a collaborative effort, especially even when looking at this recent setback. How are you hoping to use your power as the DA and also using the support of other parties, maybe even possibly the EFF, to ensure that you succeed in a future effort?
Well, that's a very interesting statement you make, because at the disillusionment sitting of council where it was discussed, you will recall the ANC has now removed the EFF member on infrastructure. So that was a very interesting and very telling move. We've tried every approach. We've gone through provincial structures, we've gone through national structures, and it's all failing. So what we're saying is to address the crisis, because this has all the potential of becoming violent. Our province doesn't have a great reputation of being stable during times of this nature. So our appeal is to all parties, let's work together. But ultimately, it's going to be a political solution, I'm afraid, to the problem.
Well, as you know, we are in an election year. Give us an insight on some of your priorities as the DA in KwaZulu-Natal when it comes to service-related matters.
Well, I think most importantly, we need a stable province. And unless we start addressing the socio-economic disparities and unemployment in our province, again, we have all the potential of becoming a violent province running up to this election. So I think it's critically important. And as John laid out today, I think it's a lot of it to do with it is jobs. We need to be creating jobs. We need to be enabling the economy and private enterprise and commerce to assist us in creating those jobs. I think those are some of the critical issues. And once you get people in jobs, you give them hope, and things can turn around. And of course, then you can address inequality. That needs to happen.
I'm glad you raised the issue that, or you mentioned John Steenhuisen, of course, after delivering the DA's party manifesto in Pretoria today. Give us some of your reflections. A number of promises were made where he says that top of the agenda for him would be to create more jobs, but he also touched a bit on the energy crisis facing South Africa as well. What are your reflections?
Well, I engage with residents and voters all the time, and if you ask people what's on their mind, it may differ in the different demographics of our country, but jobs is number one.
Sure.
You can't have almost 50% of your nation unemployed. That's number one. Number two, you can't have a critical service area like electricity where we have this continual load shedding. That impacts. It impacts on our economy, it impacts on industry and the job creation. In eThekwini, for example, coming back to the water issue, we've now got businesses that are shutting down and semigrating to the Western Cape and to other areas where there is a stable supply of water. So I think what John addressed there, I think that's what the crux of our country's challenges are. It is infrastructure, such as electricity, water, jobs, building our economy, and of course, let's not forget crime. Crime affects everybody, and John spoke about crime today, and reducing crime, particularly violent crime, GBV, rape and that, by putting together a proper police force that can actually deal with those issues.
But Francois, what role does the multi-party charter for South Africa then play, especially when it comes to the DA's plan for governance?
Well, I don't want to venture into the multi-party because that's on a national level.
Sure.
I'm the provincial leader. So, I can talk to you about my province.
Sure.
And we have created a service delivery pact with the Inkatha Freedom Party, where they need our support to govern. We are supporting them. We are trying to establish a working relationship with the IFP so that post the election in May, we can look at working together with the IFP, putting together solutions for the province of KwaZulu-Natal to address some of those challenges. And that service delivery pact is part of that process of addressing the challenges in our province.
It would seem that the vision primarily is to unseat the ANC within a region such as eThekwini as well. And you also have discussed with us your plan to also collaborate with the parties such as the IFP, which also holds a strong presence within the province. But what exactly does that collaboration look like in practical terms?
Well, look, at this stage, we're not in coalition. You can't go into a coalition until post an election. So at this stage, we like to call it we're in cooperation. We have a service delivery pact where we've got challenges with service delivery, be it water, be it roads, be it stormwater, whatever. We have a document and we have a working agreement that we've both signed and we've agreed to. And I think that builds a relationship. Rather than you going into an election and suddenly day after the election, you see, well, we could govern with another party.
Yeah.
But you actually haven't even built a working relationship. And I think in that way, the multi-party coalition is doing exactly the same.
As we wrap up our conversation, I want to discuss the potential implications of dissolving the eThekwini municipality. What are the implications for residents and the broader political landscape within that region?
So if the city was dissolved, it would mean that there would be no councillors. It would be placed under administration, and you would then have to have by-elections in every single one of the wards. So it would mean a whole new process of elections. And one of the reasons we did it is our councillors in that area are literally at breaking point because of these issues of water. They said they're prepared to give up their salary to actually prove to the residents of eThekwini, give them another shot and say, look, you know, who do you want, who can fix this problem? Clearly, the last 20 years of rule hasn't seen the ANC addressing those problems, and that would have been the result of the disillusionment, would have been the residents would take back the power and go back to the polls and put the people in power that they believe can do the job.
Well, Francois, thank you so much for joining us today. Special thanks to Mr. Francois Rodgers. He's the DA leader in KwaZulu-Natal.